Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. Leaders of the world's largest economies are meeting in Indonesia. On the agenda is Russia's war in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the summit via video link and asked for their support in ending the war. His comments were translated by Al Jazeera.
Apparently one cannot trust Russia's words, and there will be no Minsk III, which Russia would violate immediately after signing. If there are no concrete actions to restore peace, it means that Russia simply wants to deceive all of you again, deceive the world, and freeze the war just when its defeats have become particularly notable. We will not allow Russia to wait it out, build up its forces, and then start a new series of terror and global destabilization.
His comments come a day after Ukraine soldiers recaptured Kherson after Russian forces retreated, seen as a major victory for Ukraine in the 9-month-long war. Meanwhile, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution calling for Russia to provide reparations to Ukraine over its war. A resolution condemning Russia's war is expected to go before the G20. At COP27, the climate summit in Egypt, a group of 7 leading economies launched a new insurance system to provide financial aid when nations are hit by devastating effects of climate change. The so-called Global Shield is backed by the V20, an alliance of climate-vulnerable nations chaired by Ghana, and the G7 chaired by Germany. The scheme is designed to kick in with aid in the event of climate-related disasters in vulnerable nations. Critics argue it doesn't cover slower climate change effects like rising seas or the slow loss of arable land, nor does it account for historical harms. In the U.S., Democrat Katie Hobbs has been elected Arizona governor, defeating a Donald Trump ally and election denier, Republican Kari Lake, who falsely claimed the 2020 election was rigged. Hobbs, who is Arizona's Secretary of State, rose to prominence as a staunch defender of elections and warned her Republican rival would be an agent of chaos. The Democrats' victory is more proof of Trump's waning influence on the Republican Party. He's expected to announce a bid for 2024 president today. Republicans are on the cusp of retaking control of the House. Just a few victories shy of the 218 seats the party needs to secure a majority. That puts issues like abortion and gay marriage at risk. Catherine Carley reports.
I don't think there's enough votes to codify unless something happens unusual in the House. I think we're going to get very close in the House, but I think it's going to be very close, but I don't think we're going to make it.
President Joe Biden says Democrats will likely not have the votes needed to codify abortion rights, following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Several states rejected efforts to restrict access to abortion during midterm elections.
Providing the certainty is really important. The ability to protect your family through the legal means that accompany marriage is critical to folks.
The Senate is expected to vote this week on legislation led by Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin to codify same-sex marriage. A first vote on the bill could happen as early as Wednesday. I'm Catherine Carley for Pacifica Network and Public News Service.
Donald Trump has snubbed the House committee investigating the deadly January 6th Capitol attack. A subpoena required him to appear Monday for a deposition. He's filed a lawsuit instead, asking for protection from giving testimony. A statement from the committee chairs, Mississippi Democrat Benny Thompson and Wyoming Republican Liz Cheney, blasted the former president, saying he's hiding from the committee's investigation despite more than 1,000 other witnesses coming forward. Quote, Trump orchestrated a scheme to overturn a presidential election and block the transfer of power. He's obligated to provide answers to the American people, unquote. Supporters of indigenous political prisoner Leonard Peltier ended an 1,100-mile walk to the nation's capital Sunday, urging clemency for the aging man who's been incarcerated for nearly 50 years with 2 life sentences for the murder of 2 FBI agents he's maintained innocence of. Catherine Carley reports.
And we know that the administration knows of Peltier's clemency request, and we're going to continue to press and raise awareness until Peltier is granted clemency.
Rachel Thunder of the American Indian Movement says a more than 1,100-mile spiritual walk from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C. helped raise awareness of efforts to free Leonard Peltier, who has served more than 46 years in prison following the murder of 2 FBI agents at Wounded Knee in 1975. Peltier is 78 and in poor health. I'm Catherine Carley for Pacifica Network and Public News Service.
48,000 University of California graduate students began a strike across all 10 UC campuses Monday in what's called the largest student worker strike in U.S. history. At issue are demands for increases in wages and benefits. Many make less than $24,000 a year and say they should be able to work in the cities they live but cannot afford to. Stories on social media detail experiences of student graduate workers living in garages and donating blood to make ends meet. Retail giant Walmart has agreed to pay $3.1 billion to settle lawsuits filed by state and local governments over its role in selling prescription opioid painkillers at its pharmacies that contributed to the nationwide opioid epidemic. It's killed more than 500,000 people over the past 2 decades. I'm Christina Onnested, reporting for Pacifica Radio.